consciousness of me. With mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described herein. Also, 4 kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna, and 4 kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna are described in this chapter. In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the living entity has been described as non-material, spirit soul, capable of elevating himself to self-realization by different types of yogas. At the end of the 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all yoga. By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Impersonal Brahma Jyoti, or localized Paramatma realization, is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth, because it is partial. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is the ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. Different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. One who takes directly to Krishna consciousness automatically knows about Brahma Jyoti and Paramatma in full. By practice of Krishna conscious yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia. One should therefore begin yoga practice as directed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. The Lord therefore says to Arjuna, touch Trinu, or hear from me. No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore by hearing from him, one receives the greatest opportunity to become a perfectly Krishna conscious person. One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly, or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart, puffed up with academic education. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto as follows. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravanu Kirtana Hridyantak Stohi Abhadrani Vidu Noti Saritsatam Nashta Pareshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Tatarajastamo Bhava Kama Lobadayaschaye Chete Taina Vidam Stitham Sadve Prasidati Evam Prasanna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangrasya Jayate Vidyate Hridya Grantis Shiyante Sarva Samshaya Shiyante Chastya Karmani Drishta Eva Manishvare. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, but to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as the best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes free from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lusts and avarice are diminished. When these impurities are wiped away, candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. As Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection, enables one to come at once to the stage of a samshayam, samagram, understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead. The Bhagavatam 1:2, 17-21. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. So the verse again. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna Maya Sattamanak Partha Yogam Yunjanamanashaya Asamshayam Samagramam Ita Agasasi Tatchinu. Now hear from you, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita, as you may have heard before, is divided into 3 parts. The first 6 chapters, the middle 6 chapters, and the last 6 chapters. The first 6 chapters tell us how we can qualify ourselves to understand the middle 6 chapters. And the last 6 chapters give us the knowledge that confirm what we learn in the middle 6 chapters. In order to understand the middle 6 chapters, beginning with knowledge of the Absolute, these chapters deal with pure devotional service. In other words, love for Krishna, service to Krishna with this feelings of love. So, in order to be able to understand the middle 6 chapters, we first have to also understand the first 6 chapters. Of course, we can also immediately develop love of Krishna if we surrender and give up everything, as Krishna advises in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and simply always think of Krishna and never forget him. But as we can see, that's not so easy due to our material attachments. Indeed, it's our very material attachments that prevent us from the first part, practicing the first part of this verse. Maya asaktamana partha yogam yunjan marashaya asamshayam samagam yamam atad tatshini tatshinu. Actually, the last line is the first line in the translation. Hear from me.
Guru Maharaj, sorry, Mataji Lavangalata, say if it's possible, медленнее.
Medlina.
Спасибо.
So to hear is not so easy. And why is it not so easy? In the spiritual world, it's very easy. Just like one day, Raghunath Das Goswami, in his original Swarup, his form in the spiritual world, as Rati Manjari, was hearing from Srimati Radharani how to sing a certain song so that when she's with Krishna, this would heighten their mood. Srimati Radharani simply played the song on her veena and recited it, and just hearing it once, Rati Manjari remembered perfectly the song, not only remembered the words, but remembered perfectly also the mood of the song. And when Krishna came to hear the song, Rati Manjari was able to reproduce the song exactly as Srimati Radharani had sung it. Same words, same meter, and same mood. Now, originally, all of us, we have such good memories. spiritual memories, especially. Sometimes by artificial means, people develop very good material memories. But such memories are simply going from one mode of material nature to the next. If we remember the mode of ignorance perfectly, it won't help us very much. Or even if we remember the mode of passion very perfectly, it will not help us very much. And even if we remember the mode of goodness with clear remembrance, it will not help us. Only memory that connects us to Krishna, to the remembrance of Krishna, will actually help us. The material world simply exists in forgetfulness of Krishna. And what is that forgetfulness of Krishna? It's simply based upon desire. The desire to avoid remembering Krishna. To take Krishna out of our remembrance. To take Krishna out of our vision, out of our understanding. That's all the material world is. As soon as one remembers Krishna, then one, in the proper attitude, then one is no longer in the material world. One is actually on the spiritual platform of existence. So what's the problem? Well, we can divide the problem according to the first six chapters of Bhagavad Gita into basically three parts. Number one is that we think that we're the proprietor. That's called illusion. In other words, because of our existence in the material world since time immemorial, we're basically in different varieties of illusion. We can call it illusion or we can call it dreaming, but basically the material world exists as an idea that we've accepted. Now, the most prominent idea is that I'm this body. No, actually, I'm not this body. I'm a spiritual being. I'm the observer of the body. I'm the provider of the consciousness by which I can understand what's going on within my gross and subtle body that I'm presently inhabiting. But these things are different from me in the same way that watching a television or a movie, whatever is going on apparently in that television program or in the movie has nothing actually to do with me. But if I identify myself with it, then I actually get some experience from watching the movie. Otherwise, why would people pay for watching a movie if they just thought watching the movie that this is just some light flickering on the screen? Why would anyone pay to just see some light flickering on the screen? But they actually absorb themselves in the movie and experience something. Similarly, Krishna, he's not an ordinary technician. He's able to create a virtual reality that's so believable that he is able to have unlimited living entities take it seriously. Not only seriously for half an hour, but for billions of lifetimes, trillions of lifetimes. Simply experience different parts of this virtual reality and actually take it seriously. As if now I've become a king, or now I've become a queen, now I've been killed, now I'm a killer. So many different things. And if we don't like our present illusion, Krishna has also given us the ability to imagine some other illusion that we become attached to. That, all right, presently, I have nothing, I have no money, I have no position, but I can imagine myself being a king. Or I can imagine myself being the good fairy and floating around in Never Never Land forever. So Krishna has allowed us to be in all varieties of illusion. And every variety of illusion to take it seriously. Now, because of that illusion, it's very difficult to hear. And the thing that we don't like to hear at all is the fact that we're an illusion. All right, I may be an illusion, so what? Well, that illusion means that one of the aspects of the illusion is that I'm not the proprietor of anything. Now, for the conditioned soul, even if the conditioned soul wanted to accept it, the next moment he'd probably forget due to illusion. Okay, Krishna is the proprietor of everything. So what? He's not around. I'm the only one around here. So let me do as I like. And if Krishna writes me a letter, then maybe I'll think about changing it. If he somehow or another contacts me, tells me he doesn't like what I'm doing, then I may reconsider. But in the meantime, I don't know what Krishna wants me to do. I have so many things I have to do. I can't wait around till Krishna sends me an email. I'm going to have to do something with his energy. And the most obvious thing I have to do is make myself comfortable and avoid myself becoming uncomfortable. Now, that's a fact that even if we inquire from Krishna through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra what he wants us to do, Krishna is not opposed to our being comfortable, and he's not opposed to our being avoiding uncomfortable situations. But he knows, ultimately, without becoming conscious of him, there's no question of being comfortable or uncomfortable in the material world. There's only uncomfortable to different degrees. Therefore, Krishna says, Maya Sakta Manakparta, touch Shinu, hear from me. Try to hear from Krishna and take him seriously. And the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, he's God. And the first qualification of God is that he owns everything. And the second is that we should find out from him and from his representatives what he wants us to do with his energies. That's called abhideya. First is sambandha, and the sambandha is very simple. Everything here, including ourselves, belong to Krishna. And that's called sambandha. Abhideya means everything is meant for Krishna's service, and we should find out from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, with the help of the super soul, what Krishna wants us to do. Now, we always even have to hearing from Guru, from Sadhu, and from Shastra, if we're sincere and we're trying to find out what Krishna wants us to do, that we may not be so clear immediately exactly what Krishna wants us to do. But unless we have the attitude of service, then we'll never find out. Why will Krishna tell us what we should do if we don't have the attitude of service? Therefore, hearing begins with not only that Krishna is the proprietor of everything, but we're actually a servant. So we have to become convinced that we're actually Krishna's servant. Then we'll become inquisitive what Krishna wants us to do. Otherwise, if we don't have this attitude of being a servant, then why should we bother finding out what Krishna wants us to do? It's just too much. Just like when Prabhupada wrote to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, the only thing he asked at the last letter, the only thing he asked him is, what would you like me to do? That's called inquisitiveness. He didn't write, my dear Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, how many angels fit on the tip of a pin? These things are irrelevant. We may be inquisitive because everyone's inquisitive about so many things. Why do people read the newspapers? Why do they talk? The Katha was, I think everyone in the world was chanting COVID-19, COVID-19. And surely people who left their bodies at that time, if there's such a thing as a virus, that's what they became, because they were chanting the glories of COVID-19. Similarly, there's always something, mass propaganda, some war, some economic crisis, some disaster, and that's what people's minds are absorbed in by hearing. They're inquisitive. Everyone's inquisitive. Like I'm going to ask. Sounds like someone. Please mute whoever that is.
Guru Maharaj, I see, but I don't see all microphone is mute. I find.
Good. Unless there's a ghost in our computer, must be someone. So everyone is inquisitive. Krishna Maharaj, he was sitting on the bank of the Ganges, and he was going to die in 7 days. A snake bird was going to come, and all the sages from around the world and around the universe came, and Krishna Maharaj was inquisitive, just like any one of us would be inquisitive. And he asked them questions. Now I'm about to die, what should I do? Now he didn't ask them unusually. He said, do you have an antidote for snake bites? Because I heard takshaka, the snake is going to come and bite me. Maybe you have a good remedy for snake bite. Or do you know of any mantra I can chant against snakes? No, Parikshit Maharaj, he simply asked one question. What is the duty of a person who's about to die? Now, of course, poor Parikshit Maharaj, he only had 7 days, and most of us are going to live forever in these bodies. Therefore, we think, oh, poor Parikshit Maharaj, he only had 7 days, and we have 700 trillion years to live. Now, nowadays, if you ask such a question in our learned universities to the learned professor, and you ask, my dear professor, what is the duty of a person who's about to die? The most likely reaction from the professor will be that he'll call the police, that there's a terrorist in my classroom, he's threatening me. Please come and send your squad to take care of him. Because this is the last thing people are inquisitive about. Yes, maybe they're thinking, I might die. Some uncommon people who are not as pious as I am, they sometimes die. Unfortunate people die, but because I'm pious and fortunate, and I have scientific advancement to protect me. And when Shukadeva Goswami heard Parikshit Maharaj inquire about the duty of a person who's about to die, he didn't become depressed and say, oh, my dear Parikshit Maharaj, are you feeling unwell today? No, he said, or maybe you have another question, a little bit more enlivening, a little bit more positive. Why do you ask such a negative question? Maybe you should go for a swim in the Ganges and come out and ask another question. No, Shukadeva Goswami is very enlivened when he heard this answer. And he said, Varyan Esha Te Prashna, Kritan Loki Tavrit Paha, Atmavin Samatam Pumsam, Srotavyadishu Yakparaha. That this question is actually glorious. That we should think, I'm about to die. What should I be doing? Not that death is far, far away, and I have so much time before I become Krishna conscious. I can't really take it so serious. I have so many things to do today, except for remembering Krishna. Shukadeva Goswami at least thought that this is the prime duty of every living entity. Everyone should be asking this question. Not only once every 3 years when we get around to reading the Bhagavatam, this is an interesting question. I wonder what happened to Vriksha Maharaj. So Shukadeva Goswami said this is this is beneficial for everyone who asks such a question, anyone who hears the answer, and anyone who gives the answer. They're all benefited. That generally in human society, people have hundreds and thousands of questions. We're inquisitive about so many different things. What's going on here? What's going on there? What's the answer to this? What's the answer to that? But Vriksha Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami spoke and heard the Bhagavatam, so that if we hear it, then we can understand what I should be doing. Be inquisitive. What should I be doing to become Krishna conscious? What should I be doing to realize my own self, my eternal self? And if we hear the Bhagavatam regularly and take it seriously, then we'll understand that actually my duty is to always try to think about, what does Krishna want me to do? What does he want me to say? What does he want me to think? How does he want me to feel? And if we don't know, then we can inquire from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So always be inquisitive about Krishna, about that subject matter. And be careful that we don't become inquisitive about other subject matters that aren't directly related to Krishna consciousness. Of course, that doesn't mean we don't take care of our body. Like if we have the inquisitiveness, whereas the toothpaste, it's not a bad inquisitiveness. Oh, I shouldn't think about where the toothpaste is or where the laundry machine is. That kind of, I should just think, where's Krishna? Where's Krishna? And walk around in rags because we never wash our clothes, because we're never inquisitive about anything but Krishna. No, we wash the clothes like the gopis. They clean their bodies. They decorate themselves just to please Krishna. In order to preach Krishna consciousness, we have to have a healthy body. We have to have a clean body. We have to have so many things in Krishna's service. So these things can be utilized, but with the idea we're doing it to please Krishna, to serve Krishna. Otherwise, if I have the brightest teeth in the world, and as soon as I smile, everyone becomes blind, that doesn't mean I'm going back to Godhead. On the other hand, we should have properly clean teeth. We should properly wash our bodies. We should properly wear the right clothes in order to serve Krishna nicely. So that kind of inquisitiveness is also necessary. But if we're simply interested in decorating our bodies without any relationship to Krishna consciousness, then we're just wasting our time, because we've decorated so many bodies, and they're right now, then those bodies we were decorated are probably not worthy of being decorated right now. If you go to a graveyard and discover one of your previous bodies, if you were buried, and dig up the skeleton I don't think any of us are going to be very enthusiastic about decorating it now. Oh, this is my body previously. I wonder what a nice tie on it would look. I always like ties, maybe a tie or a bow, or maybe I should put a nice smile on its face, some lipstick, because it has no lips, but maybe on the skeleton. So we should be inquisitive about how to serve Krishna. And if we don't know, then we inquire submissively, humbly. It's not that we have all the answers already. If we had all the answers, we wouldn't be in the material world. Therefore, we have to find those who have better understanding than we do, what we're supposed to do and how we're going to do it, and inquire from them humbly, because no one can hear the answer, actually hear what someone is saying, not only the words, but also the mood and the understanding, unless one hears submissively, humbly, that this person actually knows more than I do, and therefore they can tell me something valuable. Something that I could actually, if I remember it and I could apply it in my life, and by applying it in my life, I'll be able to please Krishna. And when Krishna is pleased, then it says here, he'll purify my heart of these ultimately illusion that I'm this body and I'm something other than the eternal servant of Krishna's servants. So this is called, first part is called karma yoga, giving up this idea that we're the proprietors. Second is called jnana yoga, finding out what Krishna wants us to do, understanding things properly, so that we know, we can, by submissive inquiry, we can know what Krishna wants us to do. And then the last is prayojana. By rendering service to Krishna, we can actually do it in the mood of devotion, of love, without any material misconceptions and without any material aspirations. Then the result is, what is the result that we're going to get? Will we become wealthy or healthy or wise? No, the only thing that we're looking for that will happen is that we'll actually become aware of Krishna. Krishna will reveal himself to us in the form of our memory or in the form of the deity, whatever. We'll actually experience Krishna consciousness. We'll be experiencing Krishna. And Krishna and his associates are an ocean of love and devotion and ecstasy. And that's what we'll experience. Just like when Narada Muni, he heard from the sages, although he was only the son of a maidservant, 5 years old, didn't even go to Gurukul. But because he took some prasadam and he served the sages with devotion, the Bhaktivedantas, during the rainy season, and he learned from them the science of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, after his mother died, he wandered around the world and got experience of what the world's like. And he found out it's not an ocean of happiness. And then, because he practiced, I guess he chanted his rounds and studied the Bhagavatam, whatever he had. One day he sat in meditation, and in his meditation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared in his heart. He could actually see Krishna directly. Like Dhruva Maharaj, after his austerities, he could actually see Krishna directly. And every part of his body became separately enlivened in transcendental ecstasy. And he couldn't see himself as different from Krishna. He was so absorbed in Krishna, he wasn't even aware of his own identity anymore. So that's called Krishna consciousness. And therefore, in this particular verse, Prabhupada writes, or as Prabhupada writes in the Krishna book, The art of Krishna consciousness is the art of focusing one's attention and then giving one's love to Krishna. So the first part is hearing. We can't focus our attention Krishna unless we can hear about Krishna. Now, Krishna doesn't tell us to think about his form of Shama Sundar immediately, although we do hear about that. In other words, that may not be the first thing we're going to think. We look around, all we see is Shama Sundar. But he says, Rasoham Apsnukondaya, that I'm the light in the sun and moon. So by practicing a little bit, when we see the sun, we can remember that behind the sun, the person who created that sun was Krishna. It didn't come about by accident. Out of the nothingness, some billions of years ago, out of the void, the sun popped into being. Although it's a nonsensical proposition that such a thing happened, but still we've been brainwashed. Of course, if we have any brains left, after going through the modern education, most of the brains have been washed away. And therefore, even a simple thing like looking at the sun, to realize that there must have been the supremely intelligent person who put it there, who created it, and is maintaining it. It doesn't require an atomic scientist to understand that. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of atomic scientists can understand it. There's so much an illusion. But a simple person can understand it very easily. That how is it that, as that story goes about the Brahmin and the cobbler, how the cobbler immediately accepted that within the banyan tree, there are unlimited banyans, potential banyan trees. So the Brahmin, however learned he may have been, couldn't accept Krishna's unlimited potency. And so therefore he rejected Narada Muni's proposition that he would not go back to the spiritual world for many lifetimes. And basically speaking, when Narada Muni told this Brahmin that Krishna was threading an elephant through the eye of the needle, the Brahmin completely rejected it, thinking that how could God do such a thing? How could God be so powerful? So that's called, he's the typical personality in Kali Yuga, where everyone is trying to limit Krishna. Oh, Krishna can't do that. Otherwise it'd be too powerful. Oh, if I just chanted Hare Krishna once, I go back to the spiritual world. Impossible. Everyone in Kali Yuga is thinking like that. How is that possible? How could I chant Hare Krishna and God himself is coming right there with his internal energy, Srimati Radharani? Oh, this is exaggeration. How could Krishna be aware of everything? That's so good. He'd have a headache trying to figure out what's going on. How could he remember, How could he remember everyone's name for all our lifetimes? I mean, if we did that, we'd try to remember, if we found out a list of names we had for the last million lifetimes, we get a headache trying to read it. And yet he remembers every ant, when they were a queen, when they were a king, when they were Brahma. So if we think that this idea about Krishna is just an imagination or is an exaggeration, and if I chant Hare Krishna, it's not possible that Krishna could possibly appear before me, then of course we'll chant Hare Krishna, shnik, shnik, ram, ram, day, 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 hey, kitty, kitty, hey, kitty, kitty. Because why will we take it seriously? There's no way Krishna is coming here if I chant Hare Krishna. So just let me get my rounds done. And if my digestive system is enlivened by this process, by moving my lips, then there's some advancement when I eat prasadam. I'll be able to digest more. Therefore, to hear from Krishna or from his representatives, try to understand how Krishna has become the light, how Krishna has become the light in the sun and the moon, how he's the ability of man, how he's the taste in water. That Prabhupada said, if we simply drink water and remember Krishna, then we'll become a great devotee. Prabhupada also said that even if a drunkard drinks his wine and remembers that the taste of this wine is Krishna, then eventually he'll become a great devotee. Of course, I'm not recommending that. Water is probably a better alternative, healthier alternative. But still, when we drink water, we should remember that that taste we're experiencing is Krishna. Will that take away from the taste? So actually, if we remember Krishna while we're drinking water, we'll be able to actually taste what the water actually is like. Because in the presence of Krishna, our senses become purified, and therefore it'll increase the taste of the water. If we taste something with our spiritual senses, then it's much different from tasting it covered by the material energy. Just like if you're going to have a big feast, and as I said before, you put a glove on your tongue before the feast. However nice the feast may be, you're not going to be able to taste it. The glove is going to take away from the taste. And someone says, well, Prabhu, it's time for the feast. Maybe you should remove the glove. And you say, well, this glove has been around with me for a long time. I really like the glove. It's a very pretty glove. I go to every feast with this glove on. Please don't ask me to take it off. I'd feel embarrassed having a naked tongue like that. No, we take the glove off, and then we can actually taste the prasadam. Similarly, if we remember Krishna, then our coverings of the material energy will gradually dissipate, and we'll be able to experience everything as it actually is much better. And everything is Krishna's energy, and therefore everything has the same quality as Krishna. Everything can give us transcendental happiness and enlightenment by remembering Krishna. Therefore, our first business is to, at least in our daily lives, try to see how things are related to Krishna. Therefore, there's so much instruction in the Bhagavad Gita, how to live life in this world in such a way as to, first of all, come to the mode of goodness at least. As we're trying to become Krishna conscious, then we should at least try to live in goodness, because that will help us become Krishna conscious. Although goodness is not exactly the same as Krishna consciousness, but it's a basic foundation by which we can easily remember Krishna. So we have to hear Bhagavad Gita, and then we have to practice it. And if we don't know what to do, then we have to inquire. Of course, whatever we do know how to do is because of our previous inquiries from the right person, or from Shastra. But if we're at the present, we reached our limit of understanding and we can't figure out what Krishna wants me to do, then I can inquire from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and then I should do it to please them. Prahlad Maharaj, when he saw Lord Nrsingadev, and Lord Nrsingadev asked him what kind of benediction he wanted, Prahlad Maharaj said that one of the benedictions I'd like is I want to remain the eternal servant of Narada Muni. That I can't give up my relationship with Narada Muni. So it's not that, as Prabhupada was demonstrating one time in New Vrindavan that he was walking up the hill. New Vrindavan is very hilly. His mother Kumari knows. Especially at Bahulavan at that time, I believe. It was a shack. And Hari Griva was helping Srila Prabhupada up the hill. And when they got up to the hill, the top of the hill, Prabhupada threw his hand away and said, "Go away, I don't need you anymore." So Hari Griva was quite shocked that, "Prabhupada, what do you mean?" So then Prabhupada said, "Well, this is just like the impersonalists. They think my goal is to get to the Brahman, to realize that I'm actually God. And when I realize I'm God, then I throw my spiritual master away because I don't need him anymore. I'm already God." Therefore, the spiritual master, as a representative of Krishna, and the most perfect spiritual master, of course, is those who are connecting us with our disciple succession, especially Srila Prabhupada, who is completely connected to Krishna, who always is absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So unless we remain connected to Prabhupada and our disciple succession, at least in our present existence, and even when we go back to the spiritual world, it's not that we go back to the spiritual world, we become something other than the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. Actually, the spiritual master teaches us how to recognize those who are more advanced in Krishna consciousness than we are, and to serve them, serve their instruction as an example. And when we go back to the spiritual world, we'll find out that everyone there, in our estimation, is more advanced in Krishna consciousness than we are. And that I'm going to become the servant of everyone there. Even the grass and the trees and the flowers and the cows. It's not that we go back to the spiritual world and we see a cow and say, "Get out of my way, cow. I have something to do to serve Krishna." No, even we love the cows, we love the grass, we love the trees, we love the gopis, everything there we feel ourselves the servant of. Even the greatest servants in the spiritual world, Srimati Radharani, the greatest servant, she feels herself to be unqualified. And her Manjari friends are always encouraging her that actually you're very qualified, that Krishna really wants you. Otherwise, Srimati Radharani says, there's so many other gopis, maybe Krishna is more inclined to them than he is to me. So although she's the greatest devotee, she thinks herself unqualified, and she thinks her friends and her servants are more qualified than she is. And what to speak of our humble selves. And even Krishna, he doesn't think, well, I'm God, I might as well pretend that I like the servant of my servants. But actually Krishna, he feels himself to be the servant of his servants. And he's most proud of that. So even God is eternal, even the infinitesimal soul, Krishna feels himself to be the servant of that infinitesimal soul, eternally. When Srimati Radharani Krishna had an appointment with Srimati Radharani, and he didn't show up, so they were looking, finding out, and then Srimati Radharani found Krishna with many other gopis. And Krishna had treated her equally to all the other gopis. So Srimati Radharani became very disturbed, and she left. Because Srimati Radharani knows that Krishna can't be happy unless he's with her. And therefore she's only disturbed because she thinks that Krishna is not getting the maximum happiness he deserves. So when Krishna saw that Srimati Radharani left, then he went looking for her. And then he tried to appease her and said, I'll meet you in such and such place at such and such time. So the night came, Srimati Radharani was waiting for Krishna, and Krishna didn't show up. So the whole night, Srimati Radharani was completely in anxiety, waiting for Krishna. Then finally, Krishna realized he had an appointment with Srimati Radharani. And so he quickly went to where Srimati Radharani was. But she immediately rejected him. Because especially Lalita and the other senior gopis, they tell, don't be so cheap. Make yourself hard to get, otherwise Krishna won't take you seriously. So Srimati Radharani rejected him, and he couldn't do anything in order to appease her. So finally he took his head and he put it on Srimati Radharani's lotus feet. And the lac, because the gopis in Vrindavan, they decorate their feet with lac on the bottom of it, because lac is a colored red, shows their passionate love to serve Krishna. At the same time, it protects their feet from the dry dust of Vrindavan. So when Krishna placed his head upon Srimati Radharani's, or he placed Srimati Radharani's lotus feet on his head, the lac from her head, from her feet, came onto Krishna's hair. And so Krishna's hair, blackish hair, became reddish or reddened by the lac from Srimati Radharani's lotus feet. And he went around Vrindavan proudly proclaiming that he was simply the servant of Srimati Radharani. So of course we know that there was one Acharya, Jamunacharya, when he read this, he thought, how is this possible that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the creator and the maintainer of everything, could actually become subordinate to a cowherd girl? So when he was doing his commentary, he found that when Acharya had written this, and he crossed it out, that this is not possible, that Krishna is going to be so much of a servant that he's going to carry what the devotee lacks and preserve what he has. So as we know, when he left, that Krishna Balaram came when Arjunacharya left to do some business. The Krishna and Balaram, they came and they knocked at the door of Arjunacharya's house, and they brought a big feast of prasadam. Arjunacharya's wife was surprised to see such beautiful boys at her doorstep, carrying with them this prasadam. And she said, what is this? And the boy said, well, Arjunacharya told us to bring these things to you. She said, yes. But then she noticed that on these two boys, one blackish and one whitish, that there were marks all over their bodies. She said, what happened to you? Why are these marks, these scratches all over your body? And these two boys said, well, we met Arjunacharya. He gave us this prasadam to bring home. But before we did that, he took this instrument and he scratched us all over. So Arjunacharya's wife was very disturbed. Why these beautiful boys? Why is Arjunacharya abusing these beautiful boys? She took the prasadam, and then she was very disturbed that my husband, how could he do this? And she actually started to eat the prasadam. So it's the custom of the ladies in the Vedic culture that before they eat, their husband first eats. Arjunacharya came back home and he saw his wife eating, and he was very surprised. First of all, she was wondering, where did all this prasadam come from? And why is my wife eating before me? His wife explained that actually these two beautiful boys, they appeared at my door, and they said that you yourself, you sent this prasadam. But then when I saw there were marks all over their body, and I inquired from them where these marks come from, they explained that you yourself, you scratched them all over. And I became very disturbed, and therefore I didn't know what I was doing, and therefore I've been eating this prasadam because I was so disturbed. So then Arjunacharya realized that actually these two boys were Krishna and Balaram, and that they were giving him the message that he actually carries what he lacks, what the devotee lacks, and preserves what they have personally, not just by sending it by someone else. And then he wrote back again the original commentary that Krishna does personally come and bring what the devotee needs and preserves what the devotee has. That Krishna personally takes an interest in the lives of each one of his devotees. Therefore, we have to, if we take a personal interest in Krishna and try to utilize his energies for Krishna's mission, utilize the energies to maintain this body so we can serve Krishna, as Sanatana Goswami discovered when he wanted to commit suicide because he had itching sores, which he felt was contaminating Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore he wanted to commit suicide. But when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found out about this, because he's omniscient, of course, he told Sanatana Goswami that your body does not belong to you. How can you destroy it? I have so many things to do with it. So if we look at our body and the things that we have as being part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, and as much as we utilize these things in his mission, then we'll get all the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And by doing so, we'll get all the mercy of our acharyas and all the mercy of the six Goswamis, of the Panchatattva, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and ultimately we'll be able to feel the same feelings of separation from Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan, which will actually place us in Vrindavan eternally. And therefore, this life will become successful if we simply hear this message of Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, utilize things in his service, especially the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore do it with some devotion, and please Krishna, please our acharyas, please Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in such a way as that Krishna will appear within our heart and make our lives successful, appear within our memories. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes, Nityananda Seva. Nitya Seva.
Hi, Krishna Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisance as almost to Srila Prabhupada. Just this one, the past time that you just said about Arjunacharya, that Krishna provides what we lack and preserves what we have. So, but I didn't understand how by this last time we can understand, connect this.
Well, if we hear everything belongs to Krishna, and Krishna is controlling everything, and therefore whatever Krishna brings to us, we should understand, whatever we have, we should understand it's personally being given to us by Krishna to utilize in his service. Therefore, our inquisitiveness should be, what does Krishna want me to do with whatever I have? The things that he's provided for me, including this body, how he wants us to think, how he wants us to speak, what he wants us to do, and that's called Krishna consciousness. Does that make sense to you?
I understood, but did she not have food? Because Krishna Balaram bought the food.
Well, Brahmins, they live by begging. Arjunacharya was a Brahmin. She generally during the week, she wasn't having an elaborate feast. In fact, generally in the Vedic culture, people ate very simply. It was not expected that Arjunacharya was going to beg a huge feast. Obviously, there was something unusual. Otherwise, a little bit of rice, some tamarind leaves. That was usually what they had. Not gulab jamuns, samosas, malpur, and everything else. That was a bit unusual.
No. One more. Like we were talking about that, we should have faith that we are chanting Hare Krishna and following the process. And then if we follow purely, and as Krishna has described in the last chapter, all the things that we should do, and then in the end of the life, we should become eligible to go back to the spiritual world. But then, Gurudev, sometimes like I was speaking with some devotees, like they were senior devotees, but they told me that yes, but you don't go directly to the spiritual world. You first go to a planet where you get trained how to serve, and then you become eligible to go there.
Yes, you go to a planet where Krishna is having his pastimes, and you get trained up by the Nitya Siddha devotees, like Srimati Radharani, Lalita, Vishak. Not a bad thing.
I mean, that's
Otherwise-
still spiritual world.
What's that?
That's still spiritual world. All of them are there.
Yeah, of course, it's the spiritual world. Goloka, Vrindavana, Gokul, Vrindavana are not different. They're both the same. When Gopkumar and Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when he was talking to this Brahmin, telling him about his experience and how he became Krishna conscious, they were in Gokul, Vrindavan. And Gopkumar said that actually, in my experience, whether I'm in Gokul, Vrindavan, or I'm in Goloka, Vrindavan, I really can't tell the difference. Although one supposedly is in the material world, the other one's in the spiritual world, but they're all equally transcendental.
So it is in material world first, and then
Yeah, Gokul, Vrindavan, Krishna is having his pastimes in Gokul, Vrindavan, or Mathura, and in this during his Leela. But those who take part, they're actually fully conscious of him. They're not really part of the material world. They're by consciousness, they're in the spiritual world. Actually, wherever we actually are in the spiritual world, because there's nothing but the spiritual world. But due to our consciousness, we believe that's something that's apart from Krishna, and therefore we forget Krishna due to our lack of devotion to him, lack of devotional service. Therefore, we become infected by Maya, where we think ourselves, we experience things apart from Krishna.
yeah, Gurudev, is like material world is not the problem, but our attachment to the desires
Yes,
is the problem.
yes. Anything else?
Maharaj, I read Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4. I'm sorry about King Prachinabhari, and Narada Muni tells him this story, and then he meets the intelligence, and he says to him that the intelligence comes in the form of a woman, and he says this woman, she was like Maya personified, because he was just thinking about her body, limbs, or upper body limbs and stuff like this. Thinking, how can this be that this is Maya? Of course, we know it's Maya, but when Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, then they say he was watching the gopis' upper body, and he was almost dropping the hill from excitement. So how is it working?
Something we want to understand until we get a spiritual body like Krishna's and the gopis. Otherwise, just like an ant is crawling in a room, trying to figure out what's going on the roof. How can the ant figure out what's going on the roof? It's an ant. How do we know what's going on in the spiritual world with our material conceptions of life, and our material senses? We don't. Therefore, we think Krishna's pastimes is something like our pastimes in the material world with our gross and subtle bodies. They don't have material gross and subtle bodies. They only have spiritual bodies. And spiritual bodies, the only thing that goes on with the spiritual body is love, bliss, knowledge eternally, transcendental ecstasy. It has nothing to do with sense gratification. Yes, under Agnihotra.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, the question from Anastasia Stoiko, Mataji Lavangalata now translate.
Okay. Hare Krishna. So the question is, how can I be productive in my service to Guru so that Krishna will be happy with me?
Chant Hare Krishna. Avoid the 10 offenses. Find out what the 10 offenses are and avoid them. And try to do something to help others do the same thing. Take advantage of the holy name. Take advantage of avoiding the 10 offenses. And serve the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by becoming Krishna conscious and giving Krishna consciousness to whoever we meet to the best we can. Yes, Lauren.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, receive my blessings. I want to ask, is an offense if I listen lectures and chant loudly Maha Mantra and talk about Krishna? If one doesn't mind listening about Krishna, but is not totally comfortable yet with it, but doesn't mind, like he likes to listen about it, you know, but he's not, like, I'm talking in a third person. I have an aunt, that that likes to listen about Krishna and likes to eat prasadam. She doesn't mind me to share prasada with her, and she loves it. And so I gave her a book, but she's not ready to read. She's not ready to accept the knowledge. So is that an offense or it's an okay thing for me to do?
Well, give them more prasadam. Tell them about the glories of prasadam.
Yes, I always tell her.
Yeah, so eventually she eats prasadam. You know, if she hears the Hare Krishna mantra, then that'll have its effect gradually. And then as much as someone's inquisitive, then you can tell them. But to tell someone who's not inquisitive, it won't have any effect. People have to want to hear, because unless they want to hear in such a way as to do something, it doesn't really mean very much what we tell them.
Yes, she started to ask me herself because she noticed that I am doing this offering foods. Morning I do mangala at home, and she noticed those things and she started to ask me myself. She doesn't understand total yet, but it's all new for her, you know. So I gave her this book on questions and answers from Prabhupada, and she's, so this is like that, you say? I don't say, Prabhupada writes down. so it's like that, you know. She's opening, but
So we're all opening gradually. So she's amongst us who are opening gradually.
okay. Thank you.
One more question, Agnihotra?
Yes, Maharaj. So what do we lack that we can serve uninterruptedly? That our service is uninterrupted. What do we lack? That
И ниже там
happening?
еще один вопросик. И ниже там еще
And the
один
next
вопрос.
one I will answer. I will ask you. There is one more question after this.
Okay.
So what quality or what do we lack that we cannot serve continuously? That our service is interrupted always.
Oh, it takes practice, suitable practice, and detachment. So that will take some experience. So we have to try to practice regularly every day, process of Krishna consciousness, the idea of becoming detached from our misconceptions and practicing with more care and attention our process of sadhana. And then gradually Krishna will help when we become purified. Gradually, step by step, with full conviction, once you become situated in trance by means of intelligence, sustained with full knowledge, unless the mind should think of the self alone and nothing else. So by suitable practice, detachment, care and attention in our service, then gradually Krishna will reciprocate and we'll make advancement a little at a time. Or as Krishna says, as we hear about how wonderful Krishna is, as we become attracted to serve him more consistently and more enthusiastically, then Krishna will provide more and more intelligence to us, how to make progress. And when we utilize that intelligence, then Krishna gradually reveals himself more and more to us.
So the next question is, why can't we share a prasadam from one Maharaj with the devotees who doesn't have relationship to this guru?
Well, ultimately, everything depends upon the attitude of service. The Vaishnavas generally don't like to give their remnants to others because they feel themselves not the master, they feel themselves the servant of everyone else. So they think it's, in one sense, it would be out of proper etiquette to give your remnants to anyone else because that puts you in a superior position. But disciples who have taken the position of trying to learn how to become the servant of the spiritual master, it's part of the development of consciousness to do activities which are aimed at manifesting that service attitude, such as eating the remnants. Now, if someone doesn't have that service attitude towards that particular devotee, then the whole thing is not proper, because it's only meant, just like Srimati Radharani in the spiritual world, she allows her manjaris to take her remnants because she knows that will help them develop more faith and love for Krishna. But she doesn't allow it for anyone to do that. She only allows, she would never give her remnants of prasadam to Lalita and Vishaka because she sees them on the same level. But she sees her servants also as she feels herself to be the servant of her servants, but they themselves have a desire to serve her, and therefore as their servant, she allows that to go on to happen, but only in relation to Krishna, of course. So it's just part of the culture and the etiquette of devotional service, the development of proper mood. All right, I think we'll stop there. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Спасибо большое. Спасибо.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.